Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're going to be continuing on Daf Ein He Amud Aleph 75a1. We are at the Mishnah. I'm going to share the screen with you because right away we're doing the Mishnah, which is this is the picture here, 654. Okay, so this is the picture right here in front of us. So it says over here like this: Shte chatzerot zu lifnim mizo. So you have two chatzerot, one inside of the other. So this was the original. We had this picture already a long time ago, if you remember. Here's the Reshut Rabim. Yeah, this is the public domain. This is the mavui, right? This is the mavui, which is the thoroughfare. Here you have the side post, the lechi, if you remember. Here's one chatzer, one courtyard. Now another courtyard within this courtyard. So again, public domain, the lechi, the side post, mavui, this is the mavui, the thoroughfare, one chatzer, and another chatzer within this chatzer. So one within another. Shte chatzerot zo lifnim zo. Erva penimit, if the inner one, right, did an eruv and not the outer one. That's what it means over here. Irva penimit. So here, this guy, he put his eruv here. Here's the bread. You could see the bread here, right? So this is the eruv. The inner one, they did an eruv. Velo irva chitzona, but here there was no eruv done. So penimit muteret, chitzona surah. So it comes out that the people on the inside are going to be permitted to walk around and do everything what they wanted, right? But the chitzona, which is basically the what's it called? The chitzona, which is the outer one, is going to be asura. Okay, so this is the outer one, it's asura. Ha-chitzona velo apnimit. What about the next case, which is the next picture, 655? The next case, the chitzona did it, which means the one outside one did an eruv from here to here, velo apnimit, and not the inner one. So the inner one, nobody did the eruv. The outer one, they did an eruv. Shtehen asurot. Both of them are going to become prohibited. Why? Because since the inner one did not do an eruv, right? So now they are able to prohibit on the outer one. Because remember, since they have the reshut to go through the outer one, because basically there's no way of going outside to the mavoi or to the public domain without going through the outer one. So since the inner one also have permission to go use the outer one, the fact that they came and did a eruv does not permit them to carry still. They still needed the permission from the inner one. So therefore, they're both going to be prohibited. What about this case? Third picture, 656. The inner one, yeah, the inner one did an eruv between themselves, and the outer one did an eruv between themselves. I mean, they didn't do the eruv together, but each one did an eruv within themselves. The outer with the outer, and the inner with the inner. That's why it changed the colors. Look, eruv, the bread, but this is one to another, one to another. But again, outer to outer, inner to inner, separate, but each one they did their own eruv. So now so each one is permitted by themselves, meaning this one inner could carry within themselves, and the outer could carry within themselves, but they're not allowed to go from one to another. Okay, and here the inner one do not prohibit on the outer one because they also did an eruv. So the fact that they did an eruv, they are permitted within their own courtyard, and they are permitted within their own courtyard. Rabbi Akiva still says, no, the outer one is still asur. Why? Because the fact that the inner one could still walk through the outer one's property, that in itself prohibits it. Okay? The Chachamim say, the drisat regel is not enough in order to prohibit. Okay? Fine. Now says the case, Shachach echad, that's the next picture, 657. One of the outer ones forgot, and he did not do an eruv. Look, over here you have an eruv, and here you have the eruv on the outer ones. So eruv, right? The eruv, but one of the outer ones, that's this picture here, lo irev, he didn't do it. So achitzona surah, so this one is prohibited, right? Sorry, I lost the place. Right? So pnimit muteret. So the inner one is permitted because they did an eruv. V'achitzona asura, and the outer one is going to be prohibited, right? Mina pnimit. What happens though if they forgot one of the inner ones? It's the next picture. This is picture, I can't see the number, 658. So this is this one now. That one of the inner ones forgot to do it. Mina pnimit velo irev. Both of them are prohibited, right? So here they did an eruv. Here they did the eruv except for this house. So now again, both of them are going to be prohibited. What happens if they place their eruv in one place. Yeah, look, that means okay. These are the two a common place for both chatzerot. Exactly. Yeah. So here you have both courtyards, and they put the eruv in both. So what happens? So he comes and he says, "V'shachach echad ben min ha'pnimiyit ben min hachitzona." Right, whether it's from the inner one, right, or the outer one. Okay, so that means here in this picture, that's why you have both pictures. This is the inner one somebody forgot, and the outer one somebody forgot. But in both cases, they put their eruv in a common grounds, right here. Meaning everybody put their eruv here. Here, everybody put their eruv here. Just it split the pictures because here one of them that forgot was inside, and one of them that forgot was the outside. Shtehen asurot. Both of them are going to be prohibited. Okay, when they put it in the common ground. Vim hayu shel yechidim. He says if the two chatzerot belong to yechidim, that's this picture now, 660. Yeah, that means it only belongs to one person each. Okay, that means in every single chatzer you have one house only. En tzrichim la'arev, they don't have to be ma'arev each one. Okay, and the fact that this guy could walk through this one is not going to prohibit it as well. Okay, so basically in this case they don't need an eruv. Okay, but there's only one person in this chatzer, one person in this chatzer, and even though this guy could come and walk through here, it does not prohibit it. Okay, it does not prohibit him. Okay, that was a Mishnah. Okay, now this is going to be, I think, the given. No, but this is already Ein Hamud Bet.
Because the only way of coming out
is through there. Yeah. There. Okay. Okay. So this is already Ein Hamud Bet. So I'm going to stop the screen share. Let's continue. Fine. So says the Gemara.
Are you 74A?
75A.
You're 75A?
Yes. Remember that we finished 74 yesterday. We're a daf ahead.
Okay.
So we started the Mishnah today, Richard.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So now we're at the Gemara. So the Gemara on 75A1. Not A1, 75A. I don't know what A it is. Okay. Says the Gemara. Ki ata Ravdini Amar Rabbi Yanai. When Ravdini came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, Zo divrei Rabbi Akiva. That which we learned in the Mishnah, that if the outer one made an eruv and not the inner one, both of them are prohibited. Right? Remember, if I would go back to the pictures, there were two courtyards, one inside of another one. So what do we say? We said if the outer one did an eruv, but the inner one did not make an eruv, both of them are prohibited, even though the outer one did do an eruv, and the fact that the inner one did not, and they have the permissions to go through the outer one. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. The Amarbaz, he says, Afilu regel hamuteret bimkomah. Even in a case where you're talking about now the regel, which means that even the inner one, right, which made on itself is going to be permitted, but drisata regel, the fact that they could walk, the I don't know how you want to call that in English, the common usage or the fact that you're able to use, right, that rights of usage in the outer one, oseret shelo bimkomah, is going to prohibit in a case where it's not its proper place. Aval chachamim, but according to the rabbis, omrim, keshem sheregel hamuteret ena oseret, just like the regel hamuteret, which means in the inner one, when they did their own, it's not going to prohibit, right? Which means that the outer one is not going to prohibit the inner one. So too, regel asura ena oseret. So too, when the inner one that they didn't make an eruv, they are not going to prohibit. That means according to the rabbis, the fact that you can walk through a property does not change anything whatsoever. It doesn't change anything. In this case, you are permitted to walk. We're not permitted to walk, but you're permitted to carry or not carry. It doesn't matter. Because according to the rabbis, the fact that you're able to walk in a certain property, I don't care about you personally. You understand? Which means
can you leave the picture up while we're discussing this? Is there? You can still leave the picture. You can leave the picture up and still discuss this. Make sure this is the one you're. This is the one we're talking
about. One second.
The one with the arrows is what we need. No.
Here, in this case, right? This was the case. Okay.
The inner one cannot get out except by walking through the outer.
Exactly. Now, but who was the only one that did the eruv? The outer one.
Right.
Here's the outer one. The other one did an eruv. Here's the eruv, the chala of the outer one. The inner one did not do anything. There's nothing here. They didn't do anything.
Okay, but the inner one, they can't escape anywhere? There's no way to get out? No.
No, the only way they get out is through here.
Okay.
Okay, so says the Gemara, right? That according to that this shita is Rabbi Akiva. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva says, even in a case where the inner one did do an eruv for themselves, which is permitted, right? Drisat ragla bechitzona, the fact that it's going to go in the outer one, oseret shelo bimkoma, which means, right? Let's say, it's not this one, it's this one. In this case, the inner one did the eruv. Says Rabbi Akiva, in this case, can they carry here within this area?
Of course.
Of course, very good. Now, when they come and they carry here, what happens? It prohibits on these people. Okay, why? Because at the end of the day, the fact that they could walk through this property, they prohibit these people now from carrying. So says the so therefore,
even if these two people made an error for themselves?
No, because that was the next case in the Mishnah, where what happens over here, which each one did individually, this one and this one. So according to in this case, right, where you basically said irva zulatzma vezulatzma, right? That was also another case in the Mishnah. We said that Rabbi Akiva says it's osir, but the Tanakama said it was permitted in this case. Meaning, according to the Tanakama, the fact that each one made their own eruv, so their own permitted, each one is permitted to carry in their own place. According to Rabbi Akiva, osir. It's going to be.
You mean to tell me, according to Rabbi Akiva, the inside cannot leave their house?
No, remember one thing, Richard. Be very careful. We're never talking about leaving houses, because if you leave your house without an eruv, there's never a problem, unless you're going out of the tchum of Shabbat.
I'm talking about carrying something.
Exactly, carrying. Be very precise, because sometimes people say that, well, everyone's allowed to leave their house on Shabbat, you understand?
But they cannot leave and carry, and they can't go through the other chutzner, and they can't go anywhere.
According to Rabbi Akiva, the fact that these people, if they're going to come and walk here, they're going to prohibit. It's according to Rabbi Akiva, drisat haregel, which means walking through this property, prohibits. According to the rabbi, it does not prohibit. So now the Gemara is saying, our Mishnah in the beginning is words of Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva says, even regel muteret bimkoma, even the feet which are permitted in its own path, which means the inner property, the inner chatzer, when it's permitted to travel and carry in the inner chatzer, the fact that they're going to go now in the outer chatzer, in the outer courtyard, will prohibit upon the outer courtyard. But the rabbis come and say, no, just like regela muteret, just like on the inner courtyard, if they're allowed to carry, ena oseret, it's not going to come and it's not going to prohibit the outer courtyard. So too, when it's going to be prohibited for the inner one to carry, because let's say they did not make an eruv at all, so therefore they are not going to prohibit the outer one from carrying, even though they're going to walk through their field. So according to Chachamim, what they're saying is, the fact that you have the rights of walking through a property will never prohibit someone from carrying. According to Rabbi Akiva, it does. That's just, okay? Fine. So now we continue the Gemara. Again, we're in the Gemara, Ein He Amud Aleph. Tanan, we learned on the Mishnah, Erva chitzona velo pnimit. We said, what happens if the outer one did an eruv and not the inner one? What do we say? Both of them are going to be prohibited. Why? Because at the end of the day, the fact that the inner one did not make an eruv and they have the usage, they could go through it. So the Gemara is going to ask, Kamani, who is this? If you're going to tell me Rabbi Akiva, if you're going to tell me that the author of this is Rabbi Akiva, my iria regula surah, why did we only speak about a case where the inner one did not do an eruv? Even if the inner one did do an eruv, also it's going to be prohibited. Elalav, Rabbanan. Obviously, the Mishnah has to be Rabbanan that argue on Rabbi Akiva. So therefore, it comes out that it's not like Rabbi Yanai, because Rabbi Yanai said that our Mishnah is going in accordance to Rabbi Akiva, not the rabbis, not Chachamim. Here we're bringing you a proof that it has to be going according to Chachamim. Because if not, what's the chidush of this part of the Mishnah, which the inner one did not do an eruv, outer one did do an eruv, the inner one are going to prohibit it to the outer one. Well, obviously, even if the inner one would have been permitted, it would have still been prohibited. So says the Gemara, Le'olam, really be'emet, it's Rabbi Akiva. It is Rabbi Akiva. The entire part of the Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. Velozu afzu ketani. There's a famous concept in the Gemara that sometimes you say you didn't need to mention this, right? Velozu afzu. Not only this, but even this, which means not only this, but right? Ela afzu, even this, which means Rabbi Akiva saying not only in a case where the inner one did not do an eruv, it's going to be prohibiting, but even if the inner one did do an eruv, it's still going to be prohibiting on the outer one. As again, Shitat Rabbi Akiva is the fact that you have usage and you're able to walk through the outer courtyard, it's already going to prohibit it in carrying. That means even if the inner one did do an eruv, it's still going to be prohibited. So that's lo zu. Not only this, but even this is still going to prohibit. But that's why. But that's a concept that's brought down in Mishnayot many times. Lo zu afzu ketani, which means that even though I could have said, listen, I didn't need this chidush, right? It's obvious, right? But no, we're saying not only this one, but even this.
It's contrary to the last part of
the last part of Mishnah, right? It's actually okay.
The opposite.
The opposite. So comes and he says, Tznan, we learned in the other part of the Mishnah. That's a picture that I have currently. Richard, if you look at the picture, you can see it. The current picture is each one made their own private eruv. That means the inner one, that's in yellow or orangish here, they made their own eruv, and the outer one, they made their own eruv in white. So each one did their own eruv privately. So we said in the Mishnah, each one is permitted on their own. That means the inner one could carry within the inner one, the outer one could carry within the outer one. Tama, the only reasoning why is because they made an eruv. Halo eruv. But let's say, for example, the inner one did not make an eruv. Shtein asurot. They're both going to be prohibited. So v'hahaitana damar. But this one holds regel muteret and oseret. That the fact that you're able to walk through it, it's not going to prohibit. Regel asura oseret. Only if it's going to be that you're not allowed to walk around. Then walk around meaning carrying, that it's going to prohibit it. So Mani, who is this? If you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Akiva, he says even if it's going to be permitted to walk around the inside, it's still going to be prohibited on the outside. So therefore, what you have to say, it's obviously Rabbanan, Elalav Rabbanani. So one second, if the Seifa is Rabbi Akiva, so obviously the Reish is not Rabbi Akiva, right? Are you going to tell me that? In the Seifa Rabbi Akiva, what? Reish Elav Rabbi Akiva, you're going to tell me what's going on here? Again, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to ask, according to the order of ideas in the Mishnah, that you don't need this case according to Rabbi Akiva, because it's Pashut. According to Rabbi Akiva, even if the inner one did not do it, right, it's still going to prohibit, right? So to here, it's going to prohibit. So what does that mean? Why are we only saying, is it to say that in this shita, that each one is going to be permitted only because they made an eruv? If they did an eruv, make an eruv, both of them are prohibited. So says the Gemara, no, you're right. Kula Rabbi Akiva hi. The entire Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. But we're lacking part of the Mishnah. What were we lacking? Which is this case. If each one did their own eruv, each one is permitted to carry in their own courtyard. One of these words, she'asta daka, where the inner one, they made a small little tiny door, right? That's what it says over here, a small door to open up. And therefore they ke'ilu, I don't know if we have a picture. One second, let me just see if we have a picture. This is already on Ham a bit. No, we don't have a picture. So basically, I'm going to go back. You have to basically, yeah, basically, it's like you have to imagine. You have to imagine that in this case over here, forget about which ones were the eruv and not eruv, because that's not the most important here. Right here, where my cursor is, they made a small little tiny door, right? Okay, and by doing that, they took away their drisat regel min hachitzonah.
What's that?
They made like a small opening, a small door, and on Shabbat they close it.
They close it.
They close it. So the
what did they take out?
No, right here where my cursor is, where my mouse is. That's
they
where
put
they
the door,
a little tiny door. Now by making that door and they closing it, they are showing, right, that the fact that they're able to walk through the outer one does not actually connect the two together. That they're obligated, right? They're just obligated to go through just because I don't have another entrance. But it's not that we are like connected. You understand? It's like I'm putting a privacy fence. I'm coming and I'm putting something. By me putting my door, I'm showing we're disconnected. Yeah, that's what it is. I still have to go through your shop or your courtyard in order to get out. Yeah, okay, fine. But we're not connected.
And
okay?
Because of that, the outside is not prohibited?
So because of that, the outside is not prohibited, exactly. Because each one, they did their own eruv, and we put a door. So that door now makes it that way. Now he says over here, aval, lo astadaka, but if you do not make this small little tiny door, hachitzona esura, the outside one is going to be prohibited. These are the words of Akiva. Because Rabbi Kiva prohibits the walking, the passage through, he prohibits it. But the rabbis say no. The fact that you're able to walk through my property, you will never prohibit upon me in order to carry within my own property if we did an eruv between ourselves. That's shitat chachamim. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Mativ Rav Bevai bar Abaye, asks Rav Bevai bar Abaye, Bima Yushal Yechidim, what's the case right now if it was of Yechidim? Yeah? What was Yechidim? Remember, the case was it was only one person and one person. That's this picture. Okay? One courtyard belongs to one courtyard, one person, one courtyard. That there's no multiple houses. No. It's all one courtyard, one house, one courtyard, one house. Okay? So what's the question? There we said, they don't need an eruv at all. Hashel rabim. But if it was going to be minimum of 2 houses in each, because that's a rabim, they do need to make an eruv. Alma, so you see from here, regel amuterabim kumayno said it, that a regel which is permitted in its own place, for example, the inner one, right? So it's not going to prohibit it. Regel asura said it, only if the feet which were prohibited, meaning if the inner courtyard are prohibited to carry within themselves, that's called regel hasura. A regel, the foot, which is prohibited because they can't carry in their own place. Only such a case will it come and prohibit upon the outer one. However, though, if it's permitted within its own place, it's not going to prohibit on the outer one. Okay? The od mativ ravina, and Ravina asks another question. Let's go back to the picture where one of the outer people forgot and they did not do an eruv. This picture right here. This is the outer one. One of the outer ones, he did not make an eruv. Lo eruirev. He did not make an eruv. The inner one, they did make an eruv between themselves. The outer one, they did, but not one person here. So what happens? The primit muteret, the inner ones are permitted. Vachitzona asura, and the outer ones are going to be prohibited. If right now one of the inner ones forgot, that's this picture, the inner ones forgot, and he did not make an eruv, so now both of them are going to be prohibited. Both. These guys, they all made an eruv, and even here they made an eruv, just this guy forgot. No, everyone's prohibited. Tama, the reasoning why is the shachach, because this guy forgot. Halo shachach, let's say he didn't forget. Shten mutarot, both of them are going to be permitted. Alma, so you see from here, regel muteret, and I said it, that if this was permitted, so then what's going to happen? It's not going to prohibit on the outside. Regel al-surah said it, only if it's going to be the one which is prohibited, meaning the foot which is prohibited, that prohibits upon other people. So answers the Gemara, Ela ki'ata Ravin, but rather when Ravin came from Eretz to Bavel, after Rav Dimi, Amar Rabbi Yanai, he said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, Shalosh machlokot badavar. There's actually 3 different machlokot in this, right? There are 3 different shitot. It's not just Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis. There are 3 shitot. Listen carefully. Shita number 1, Tanakama. The Tana, the Kama, which is at the beginning of Mishnah, that he said that if the outer one made an eruv and not an inner one, both of them are prohibited, right? And if the inner one did it, both of them are going to be permitted. Savar regela muteret ena oseret, regela surah oseret. So he comes and he says, it all depends on you. If you are permitted, you're not going to prohibit others. If you are prohibited, you could prohibit others. If you want, you could call it, right? Somebody that's, I don't know if you want to call it contagious, whatever you want to call it. Basically, if you have the bug, you are going to come and you could transfer that bug to others. But if you yourself, you're clean, even though you're going right through, you're not going to transfer anything. There's nothing that happens there. Second shita, which is Rabbi Akiva, he says, no, afilu regela muteret oseret. Even if you are permitted, you still prohibit upon others. So again, just remember that Rabbi Akiva is the other extreme, meaning the middle grounds was Tanakama. It all depends on you. You are permitted, you cannot prohibit someone else. If you're prohibited, you prohibit on someone else. According to Rabbi Akiva, you could always prohibit. Okay? Afilu regela muteret, even if you are permitted, the fact that you have rights going in the outer one, you always could prohibit. According to Rabbanan Batrai, according to the rabbis later, which are the last part of the Mishnah, okay? Savri, they hold, so now we come out that we have all 3 sides of the spectrum. Rabbi Akiva is one extreme, that even when you're permitted, you could prohibit others. Tanakama was in the middle grounds. If you are permitted, you cannot prohibit, but if you're prohibited, you could prohibit. And according to the rabbis, the other extreme. Regel muteret oseret, so too regel asura oseret, which means you never could prohibit on others. Even if you yourself cannot carry, even if you're contagious, even not contagious, even if you have the bug, you're not contagious. You cannot pass it over. That's shitat chachamim, chachamim at the end. Okay, 3 different shitot. Until here, we're clear?
Yes.
Thank you.
Clear. Capito.
Capish, very good.
But don't ask me to repeat it.
Okay, very good. You want me to repeat?
No, I'm telling, don't ask me to repeat it.
Okay, fine. Okay, very good. Fine. Okay, let's continue. 2 dots. What happens if they put their eruv, right, in one place, and one of the middle people forgot it? So that's this picture. Yeah, again, everyone could see on the page this picture. Everyone put it in one place. This is the eruv. Also here, the eruv. However, though, the difference between these 2 sides of the pictures was one person forgot from which side. In this picture, one of the inner people forgot. In this picture, one of the outer people forgot. But remember, everybody else are putting their eruv in one house, in one place, in one part of the courtyard. Okay, so that's what we just said here. And one of the inner people forgot, which is this side of the picture. Okay, one of the inner people forgot, right? So what happened? We said both of them are going to be prohibited. What does it mean in one place, right? So it says, the siman is chitzona. Okay, fine. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav says Rav Yehuda Marav, chitzona. They put it in the outer one, in the outer courtyard. And that's why in this picture, both pictures, they always put it in the outer courtyard. Okay? So why is it called one place? Because it's a place which is fitting for both. Which means, remember, if I live in the outer courtyard, I have no rights to go into the inner courtyard. I don't need to. So why am I going to go through it? However, though, if you live in the inner courtyard, you for sure are going in the outer courtyard because that's your rite of passage. The only way to go to the Mavui and to the Reshut Rabim is to go through the outer courtyard. So you have the rights to go through my property. I do not have the rights to go through your property, through the inner courtyard. So therefore, he's saying it has to be a makom, which is miyuchad, which is designated for everybody, for both of them, for the inner and outer. So it has to be placed in the outer courtyard. Okay? Ayin Hei Amud Bet, 75b. Tanya Nimihachi. We also learned this in a Braita. Natnu eruvam b'chitzona. If they put it in the outside, and one of the outside forgot. So that's the left part of the picture, this one. One of the outside. If you look at my cursor, right, left part of the picture. Okay? So what happens? V'shachach, right? V'natnu be'eruvam v'shachach echad ben min chitzona u'ben min pnimit ve'lo yirev, and didn't. Both of them are going to be prohibited. So natnu eruvam b'pnimit, if they put the eruv in the inner one, v'shachach echad min pnimit ve'lo yirev, and one of the inner ones forgot, both of them are going to be prohibited. Mina chitzona ve'lo yirev, if it was one of the outer ones, shtei masurot, both of them are prohibited. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva.
It sounds like you just said the same thing 3 times.
No. Each one was different. One more time. Tanin mihachi. Right? We learned in a Braita. Natznu eruvam b'chitzona. If they put the eruv, right, in the outer one. Okay? Now, shachach echad, and one of them forgot. Ben mina chitzona ben amepnimi, whether it's the inside or outside. So that's this picture. Whether it's the outside or the inside. One forgot. They put it on the outside. Okay, that's the first case.
Prohibited.
V'natznu eruvam b'pnimit, right? If right now they put the eruv on the inside, so now this, I don't have this picture, but to everybody putting their eruv in the inside, I don't have a picture. Okay? Now one of the inside people forgot. So imagine everybody here, instead of putting it in this house, they put it in this house. But one of the inner ones forgot. Both of them are going to be prohibited. Okay?
The same as the other.
Now, right? Why? Because remember, if the inside does not have an eruv, the outside is not a good eruv. If right now from the outside forgot, right? If somebody from the outside forgot, shtein asurot, they're both going to be prohibited as well. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You just said the same thing twice. One the inner forgot, one the outer forgot.
Exactly. No, it's the same halacha, but it's not the same case.
I understand.
Okay, but you're right. It's the same halacha according to Rabbi Akiva. Because remember, what we just mentioned 2 minutes ago was Rabbi Akiva is always the extreme. According to Rabbi Akiva, just like regel ha'oseret oser, just like the foot which prohibits, so too, which prohibits, which means that he cannot carry himself, prohibits other people, so too even regel ha'muteret oseret. Even if the regel which comes in, it's permitted to carry, it's going to prohibit other people as well. Chachamim come and they say, bezo, in this case, where one of the outside people forgot, and they put their eruv in the inner one, the panimit, the inner one is permitted. Only the outer one are prohibited, which means the inner courtyard, since they did everything correctly, they did an eruv, and they have the eruv of the outer one. Even if one of the outer people forgot, they are still permitted in the inner one. Okay, it doesn't affect them. Okay, because the inner one is
the outer one.
Which one?
And they carry in the outer one?
No, they cannot carry in the outer one, but they could carry in the inner one. Okay? So Amar le Rabbi Bar Chanan Abaye, says Rabbi Chanan to Abaye, Maishna Rabbanan, what's the reasoning of the Rabbanan? What's the difference? That they say that the inner one is permitted, Mishum da'achada dasha mishtamsha, because they could come and they could close the door, right? And then they could use their own property. The Rabbi Akiva Nami, according to Rabbi Akiva, the same thing. Teicha dasha u'tishamesh, right? Which means, why don't you say the same thing? That the inner one should close the door, right? And then they should only use the inner one also as well. Which means the question is, why doesn't Rabbi Akiva hold of the same svara of Chachamim, that the inner one should just close their door and use their own property?
We're not even discussing lechis or tzuras Pesach.
No, there's no lechis and tzuras Pesach here. Remember, here we're only talking about the door, right? Which I don't have a picture. I don't know why, but there's no pictures of the door. But right here, imagine that there's a door right here.
I got it.
Or right here, okay? Just close the door and that's it. So Amalei, so he comes and he says, Eruv margila. He says, no, the Eruv, which is in the inner property, is going to be margil, the outer property, to also use the inner property. Meaning the fact that the inner property are putting the Eruv by them, it now gives me, the outer property, ke'ilu, permission to come to the inner property. And that's why he says it doesn't help. So the Gemara says, 1 second, so what about the rabbis? So according to the rabbis, you should also say the same thing. If the Eruv is in the inner property, right, how could you just come and close the door and now say everything's okay? It's not true. I could just open up the door. What are you doing? I made my Eruv here. My Eruv is inside here with you guys. So the Gemara answers, he says, no. The rabbis hold a very famous concept. The rabbis many times say that, for example, let's say I send you to be my messenger and you mess up. There's a concept brought down in the halakha that I could say, I sent you to fix, which means I sent you to fix something, not to put your foot in it. You understand? I sent you to do something positive, not something negative, which means I could remove the shlichut, because I told you to do one thing, you went and you did something negative. So that's it. So what happened? Say Chachamim, the exact same concept. When they come and they say, I made you into a shutaf in the Eruv, I only did it in order to permit us to use the outer courtyard, but not to prohibit upon us to use our inner courtyard. You understand? That means they could come and they could say, it's doing the exact opposite. I don't want you anymore. Meaning, if you're going to help me out, help me out. But the second you're going to come and you're going to do something negative outside, I don't need you. I don't want you. I'm closing the door. That's what the rabbis say you could say. So the Rabbi Akiva nami tema. So why does according to Rabbi Akiva, you can't say the same thing? Answers the Gemara, de amra la, because the outer one could say to the inner one, mevatlina lach reshuti. We are mevatel our reshut to you. And then you guys are allowed to be metaltel in it. So therefore, since through bitul reshut, right, they could take away this negativity, this negative thing. So that's why they say that we don't say this. But Rabbanan, according to the rabbis, em bitul reshut mi chatzer lechatzer. It does not help to be mevatel reshut from one courtyard to another courtyard. Within the same courtyard, you can annul your property, but not from one courtyard to another courtyard. So the fact that the outer one could come and say, we annul our courtyard and now we didn't do anything wrong, meaning we're not making anything bad for you, it doesn't exist. Okay? So says the Gemara, so why don't we just say that the machloket between Shemuel and Rabbi Yochanan, right, was the same machloket now between Rabbanan and Rabbi Akiva. The Shmuel holds like the Rabbanan. There's no such thing as a bitul reshut from one property, one chatzer, one courtyard to another courtyard. And Rabbi Yochanan says like Rabbi Akiva that it does help. Shmuel says no. Ana de Amri, I could say even according to Rabbi Akiva. When does Rabbi Akiva only say this thing that you are allowed to be batel from one property, one courtyard to another courtyard? Only if it's going to be two courtyards, one inside of another. They could prohibit upon each other. But in another case, right, which is basically going to be one beside each other, do they prohibit it? Let me see if I have a picture. No, we don't have a picture. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, so he says, what's going on exactly? It says, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ana de Amni, I hold like even according to the rabbis. When do the rabbis say this? Only they could say, it says what? Until, right, you're going to be mivatel your reshut, until now you're actually making me prohibited. But over there, to do with two chatzirot, one beside each other, Mika sartala, you didn't prohibit it upon anyone else. So basically, we cannot come and depend the two machlokot with each other. Each one is an independent machloket. Fine. Two dots. Nima yushel yechidim. What happens now in a case where you had, right, yechidim? The yechidim was this case, remember. This case. Yachid, individual. Each one had their individual property. So now the Gemara is going to come and say the following part. Look at the picture. Right? Amar of Yosef, says of Yosef. Tani Rebbe taught, Hayush Losha. What happens if there's three houses? Yeah, there's three houses. Two in one chatzer, right? And now it doesn't matter though, whether it's two in the outer one or two in the inner one. Okay, it doesn't matter. But there's basically two in one. That's what we're saying. So it says, Hayush Losha Asurim. It's always going to be prohibited to carry unless they make an eruv. Okay? So Amar Lehu, Rav Bevai, says Rav Bevai, yeah, Lo tetzaitule, don't listen to him. Ana amnita nihala. I actually said this Shmuel. Mishmed Ravada Barava amnita lena. I said the name of Ravada Barava. Hoil vani kore baen rabim bachitzona. Since I'm going to come and I'm going to say that there's a lot of people, minimum two in the outer one. And therefore, because of that, that's why it's going to be prohibited. Meaning, since there's two in the outer one, that's why it's going to be prohibited. So Amar of Yosef says to Yosef, Mareh de Avraham, master of Avraham Avinu, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like Ribono Shel Olam, Rabim beRebbi yichlafli. What? I heard the words, since I say Rabim b'chitzona, and I made a mistake in Rabim and Rebbe, and that's why I thought it was Rebbe and it really was Rabim, because I came and I said, right, Tani Rebbe, the Rebbe taught Hayush Losha Asurim. And he's saying, no, it's not Rebbe, it's Rabim. If there's a lot of people in the chitzona, not Rebbe said it. That means if there's two in the outer one, but the outer one is the more important one here. So says the Gemara, Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Leolam mutarot. Really, be'emet, they're going to be permitted. Ad shiyu b'pnimit ve'echad b'chitzona. Ad shiyu shnaim. So you're going to have two in the inner one, and then in the outer one. So this is Shmuel. Shmuel says that you're allowed to be metaltel in the chitzona that has two, right, without doing an eruv, because the outer one is not going to be prohibited unless you have in the middle one, in the inner one, two that they did not make an eruv. Then it's going to prohibit on the outer one. So according to Shmuel, this is only the only case which is going to prohibit it, not this one, because in this one, right, or this one, whichever one you want, in this one, since the outer ones are the rabbim, that's why they're going to be permitted, because they made an eruv, and the inner one that did not need to make an eruv does not prohibit it upon them. But in this case, where you have two in the middle, in the inside one, they do prohibit. Okay? Amar Rabbi Lazar, says Rabbi Lazar, the nochri, if you have a goy, hareu kerabim, he's like a rabbim. Here you have two Jews, and they made an eruv between them. Here, you don't have a Jew. If you would have had a Jew, it would have been permitted. Here it's a goy, nochri. this goy is like Rabim. It's like a lot of people. And therefore what happens is he prohibits the inner people, the outer people, these people. Ma'ishna Yisrael de lo asar. What's the, so the Gemara is going to ask why? Why is it that if it was a Jew, it doesn't prohibit, and if it's a goy, it does? Ma'ishna Yisrael de lo asar, teman di yada yada, uman de lo yada. Right? He says the reason why is because when you have a Jew that he was living in the inside, he's not going to prohibit teman di yada yada. But anybody that knows that somebody that lives in the inside, right, he knows that it's going to permit or prohibit. Uman de lo yada, and somebody that does not know, right? That means if somebody's going to think that there's two people that lives on the inside, he could have thought maybe Eruv. Maybe they made an Eruv. Nochri nami amrin. Why don't we just say the same thing? Yada yada lo yada savar, which means like this. What's the concept behind it? The concept is behind it like this. Let's say he's walking by. I'm over here. Look at my cursor. I'm over here. I come and I see two houses, and I see people carrying here. So what am I going to think? But I see here a door. From here, I could see the door, but I don't know how many people live here. So if I already know that there's only going to be one house there, so okay, I know one house doesn't prohibit. If I think maybe there's two houses, okay, so maybe they made an eruv. So ask the Gemara, say the same thing. If right now I'm walking by, now there's a goy here. If I only know that there's going to be one house, so okay, one house doesn't prohibit. But if I think that there's more than one house, so why can't we just say that they rented out the property from the goy? So why should it be prohibited all of a sudden? Why all of a sudden is if this is a goy, it prohibits, and if it's a Jew, it doesn't prohibit? What's the reasoning? Answers the Gemara, Stam Nochri, Iita deogar mifapae. A regular goy, if he's going to come and he's going to rent out his property, he's going to mention it. And everybody knows that he does it, which means that everyone knows that the goy went and he rented out the property. If he didn't rent it out, nobody knows about it. So therefore, that's why it has a call. Stam Nochri Iita deogar mifapae. So Amar Rav Yehuda ben Shmuel says, Rav Yehuda ben Shmuel, Asara batim ze lifnim zo. Here you have here it is. 10 houses, one inside of the house, the other. Okay, Asara batim ze lifnim zo. So he says, Primi notenet eruvo. The inner one is going to give his eruv. No, it's this case. So it says over here. So what happens?
Art Scroll got a picture.
Which one?
Art Scroll has a picture.
You're right. Art Scroll also has a picture. So 10 houses, one beside each other. The inner one, right, could make an eruv with everyone else, and it's already enough. Which means the other 9 houses do not have to do the eruv. Only the inner one, which in this case it's over here. In the Art Scroll, he brought the picture on the other side. That the one house was over here, but it's the same thing. Okay? So therefore, the inner one is going to make an eruv, and that's it. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even the outer one, they all have to make an eruv.
What kind of outer houses are these? There's no way to get in. I mean, it doesn't look like other separate houses.
Yeah, it's basically here. It's only one entrance.
Well, there's no such house like that.
Okay, I don't know. Fine.
Maybe not here, but maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, it could be. Listen, you could have right now that when you open up the first door, you have like another door or like another room, and then all this is like a hallway connecting all of them together.
Could be like in a dormitory, maybe.
Yeah, like a dormitory type of thing. Okay, so now it says so achitzon betcharu. He says 1 second, but the outer one is just like a betchar. A betchar, if you remember, was like a gatehouse. So says the Gemara achitzon shel pnimi, the outside of the inner one. By my people, get what are they arguing with? More savar betchar diachid shme betchar. One of them says a betchar of an outside is called a betchar, and the other one says that betchar lo shma betchar. It's not called a betchar. Okay, so Amar of Nachman, but that was called a betchar. A betchar was like a gatehouse, or what you're talking about at the beginning. That it's like
What was the gatehouse? The single one or the one at the end of the 9?
The one at the end of the 9. Okay, so Amar of Nachman, Amar of Avua, but of Amar Rav. When you have 2 courtyards, that's this case. 2 chatzerot, and you have the houses in between. 2 chatzerot and 3 houses in between. Okay, so this is chatzer 1, chatzer 2, and the houses in between. Right? Each one has to come and give their eruv in each one. And then
Isn't there a third chatzer?
It's not a third chatzer. This is not the chatzer. You see? Here,
What's
look.
this in the middle? What's this in the middle?
It's like part of the mavui.
All right.
Mavui. Okay, but Blina, we'll continue this tomorrow. We'll explain this last case again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. We have
Thank
to
you,
stop here.
Rabbi.